Oh, sorry, I accidentally poured soda into the gas tank of your luxury SUV, my sister said, after I refused to sign over our parents' condo. Mom added, mistakes happen. I did not yell. That night, I updated the insurance policy and restricted her access to the joint savings. But at 7:42 a.m., she woke up to something far unexpected. I had just finished my coffee when I saw her standing by my driveway. Ashley, my sister, a plastic bottle in one hand, her phone in the other, smirking like she'd been caught doing something she thought was clever. The sun reflected off the black paint of my Range Rover, the one I'd worked for years to buy and kept polished like new. That's when I noticed the gas cap was open. She turned slowly when she heard me step onto the porch. Oh, she said with fake surprise, lifting the bottle. Sorry, I accidentally poured soda into the gas tank of your SUV. Maybe it was an accident. Maybe she thought it was the washer fluid tank. She'd made that mistake before. But standing there with that smirk, it was hard to believe it wasn't deliberate. My pulse didn't even rise. Not yet. You accidentally poured soda? I asked in a flat tone. Ashley shrugged. It was in my hand. I thought it was windshield fluid. Mistakes happen. Then Mom's voice came from the yard. She was holding her phone, clearly watching. Mistakes happen, she repeated. No apology. No concern. Just dismissal. I looked at them both, my hands in my pockets. The same pockets that held the keys to more than just this SUV. The same pockets where I kept my patience, already worn thin. In my head, I'd already done the math. Ashley wanted the condo. Our parents' place in the city, left to both of us. She'd been pressuring me for months to sign it over. I'd said no, knowing she couldn't afford it without draining the family account. This was her answer. Not a conversation. Not an argument. Just a bottle of soda in the gas tank. I didn't yell or curse. I didn't even check the SUV. I walked past both of them, opened my front door, and went inside. From the kitchen window, I saw her set the bottle on the curb like she was discarding evidence. Mom said something quietly, and they both laughed, the laugh of people who think they've won. That night, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to my insurance company. I need to update my policy, I said, reading the VIN from my files. Also, no one but me is authorized to touch this vehicle. The second was to my bank. Remove Ashley Carter from the joint savings. Effective immediately. Both calls ended with the same sense of closure, like locking a door from the inside. When I went to bed, the street was quiet. The SUV sat under the lamppost. Gas cap still open, but I didn't care. I had a different kind of fuel now, one that didn't come from any tank. And at exactly 7:42 a.m. the next morning, she was going to wake up to something far different than a calm older brother. By the time the first sunlight came through my blinds, my decisions were made. My phone was still warm from the calls I'd made. Insurance, then the bank. Ashley's name, gone from the joint savings. My SUV, locked down. I moved through the kitchen in silence, coffee brewing, remembering 3 months earlier when I'd given Ashley a cashier's check for her mortgage. She'd been in tears, promising to repay me as soon as things got better. They never did. 2 weeks later, she called it an emergency when her fridge stopped working. I paid for a new stainless steel one without hesitation. Family helps family, right? Now, that same family was laughing while soda damaged my SUV's fuel system. My phone buzzed, the family group chat. Mom, you're being dramatic. It's just soda. Ashley, you can get it flushed out. Not a big deal. Not a big deal. I stared at those words until they blurred. To them, it was harmless. They thought I'd pay for the damage and move on, like always. But I knew better. There were no accidents in this family. Only moves in a game I hadn't been playing for years. That was about to change. I opened my laptop. The plan in my head wasn't loud or messy. It would be precise, the kind of move that changes everything. And if Ashley thought I was going to stay on the defensive, she was about to learn that silence doesn't mean surrender. At 7:42 a.m., the knock on Ashley's door was loud enough to rattle picture frames and wake neighbors. She stumbled to the door, hair messy, wearing the same oversized t-shirt she'd slept in. When she opened it, she froze. 2 people stood there, one in a navy windbreaker with the First Union Bank logo, the other with a badge and clipboard from the city collections office. Both looked like people who did this job every day and weren't here to negotiate. Ms. Carter, the bank representative asked, already looking past her into the hallway. We're here regarding the default on your vehicle loan. As of this morning, The account is in arrears beyond the grace period. The lender has authorized repossession. Ashley blinked, shaking her head. No, no, the payments go out automatically. My brother. Not anymore. The city official interrupted, holding up a folded notice. You'll want to read this. Your property tax installment for the year was due on the 1st. The payment source is frozen. Her mouth went dry. She stepped back inside and called her husband. It went to voicemail twice. On the third try, he answered, his voice tense. What happened to the rent check? The landlord called. It bounced. He says we have until Friday to fix it or we're out. Ashley felt heat creeping up her neck. Something's wrong with the account. Her phone buzzed again. Mom. She answered immediately. What did you do? Mom's voice was sharp and angry. I just tried to pay the electric bill from the joint account. It says, transaction denied. Everything's locked up. All of it. Ashley pressed a hand to her forehead as the room spun. Outside, a tow truck pulled up, hydraulic arms clanking. The bank rep walked past her with his clipboard, not even looking at her. It hit her then. This wasn't random. This was the result of actions I'd taken to protect my resources. And she knew exactly whose move it was. By noon, the family group chat was flooded with messages. My phone vibrated constantly. MOM, what did you do? Ashley, you can't just take MY money. MOM, this is crossing the line, Mark. Over a soda? Ashley, you think you're clever? Watch what happens when. I muted the thread and let them keep talking. I had work to do. This was never about soda. It was about years of them treating me like an open wallet. I'd covered Ashley's missed mortgage payments just this once, 3 times. I'd replaced her fridge when it broke, even delivered it myself. I'd given Mom cash for unexpected repairs that never seemed to fix anything. And when I said one clear no, you can't have the condo, they crossed the line with a smirk and a bottle of Diet Cola. That line was no longer in the sand. It was set in concrete. At 1:14 p.m., Ashley called. I didn't answer. At 1:16, she called again. I let it go to voicemail. At 1:18, Mom tried. This time I picked up. What do you think you're doing? She said without greeting. Ashley's in tears. The bank is here. They're taking her car. I leaned back in my chair, watching the tow truck outside my office pull away with her white SUV. Sounds like she's having a tough morning, I said calmly. This is unnecessary, Mark, Mom snapped. You're making things harder for your sister because you can't let go of some apartment. Hurting your sister? I laughed without humor. No, I'm protecting my resources from someone who poured soda into a $70,000 engine because she didn't get her way. Mom started to speak, but I kept going. And that condo you think is just stuff? Dad's name is on the deed. He wanted me to retire there. You don't get to rewrite that because Ashley can't handle her bills. Silence. Then she said what I expected. We're family, Mark. Family forgives. Family respects. I corrected. Forgiveness is earned. Respect is required. I hung up before she could reply. By 2:30 p.m., my attorney texted. Changes processed. All joint accounts secured. New beneficiary designations confirmed. I looked at the message, feeling the shift, not just in money, but in control. Outside, heavy rain began, hitting the roof hard. Somewhere across town, Ashley was probably staring at her empty driveway. Mom was probably on the phone with relatives, telling them I'd gone cold. They would call it betrayal. I called it restoring balance. Underneath it all, there was no relief or victory, just the certainty that the situation had changed, and I was no longer someone they could control without asking. When my phone buzzed again, I didn't check it. I just turned it off. The rest of the night, nothing. No calls, no texts. Just silence. The kind that doesn't mean they've given up, but that they're planning their next move. By morning, I knew I was right. At 6:08 a.m., a blocked number called. I ignored it. 30 seconds later, the same number called again. This time, I answered. You've made your point. Mom's voice was tight and brittle. Now fix it. Fix what? I asked. You know what? Ashley can't pay her bills. She's panicking. I can't cover both her mortgage and the Cabo trip. I almost laughed. Cancel Cabo. A pause. We can't, she said sharply, as if it was impossible. The flights are non-refundable. The resort is. Already paid for with the same account you've been draining for years. I finished. So no, you can't cover her mortgage because you already chose your vacation over her housing. This isn't fair, Mark. I let the silence hang until it became uncomfortable. You're right. I said. Fair would have been you in my driveway yesterday morning, holding Ashley accountable for damaging my SUV. Fair would have been you telling her to apologize instead of accusing me of dramatizing. She started to reply, but I hung up. By 9:15 a.m., I was at the downtown notary's office. 2 signatures and 1 embossed seal later, the condo was legally mine alone. No more joint ownership, no more family property. The phone buzzed in my pocket while I signed, but I ignored it. Outside, yesterday's rain had cleared to a bright, sharp morning. I walked 3 blocks to the insurance company, handed over my SUV keys, and watched as they loaded it onto a flatbed headed to the dealership. I had already chosen its replacement, bigger, faster, and impossible to damage with soda. By noon, I had locked every digital account they could access: emails, streaming, even the shared grocery delivery app. If they needed milk, they could buy it themselves. Then came a knock at my door. 3 short knocks. My neighbor, an older man who had lived across the street for decades, stood there holding a small cardboard box. "This was on your porch," he said. "Thought I'd bring it over before it starts raining again." The box had no return address, just my name in block letters. Inside was a folded piece of paper and a set of old house keys. The note read, "You were right, Dad." I stood there for a moment, staring at the keys. I knew exactly what they were. Keys to the lakeside cabin he bought years ago, the one no one else in the family knew existed. My phone started buzzing again, this time with a flood of messages in the family group chat. "Ashley, you told Dad. Where are you? We need to talk. Now. Ashley, if you think this is over." I put the phone down on the counter and looked out the window. My neighbor was back in his driveway, cleaning fishing gear. That's when it clicked. I didn't need to answer. I didn't need to argue or explain. Peace was in my kitchen, in the form of keys to a place no one else could touch. By 2 p.m., I was halfway to the cabin, my new SUV running smoothly. I stopped at a roadside diner for lunch, ordered an oversized sandwich, and left a tip that made the waitress pause. On the radio, a news report played about storms approaching Cabo, flights delayed, resorts evacuated. I smiled into my coffee. Somewhere, my family was watching the sky over their vacation darken, realizing they'd have to return early. Somewhere, Ashley was realizing the accounts were closed, the SUV was gone, and the condo was no longer hers to imagine owning. And somewhere, Mom was probably thinking back on every conversation we'd had, wondering when I stopped being the son who always gave in and became the man who walked away. I reached the cabin as the sun was dropping behind the tree line. The air was cleaner than it ever was in the city. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and set the box of keys on the counter. No phone, no noise, no demands. Just me, the quiet, and the knowledge that for the first time in years, every choice was mine. By the time they figured out where I had gone, I'd already be gone again. 3 days passed without a single call, text, or knock at my door. It was almost suspicious, like the stillness before a storm. On the 4th morning, the storm arrived. It started with a voicemail from Mom. Her voice was soft, almost rehearsed. "Mark, listen, we've been talking, and we think we can work this out. Maybe we just start fresh? For the family's sake." I didn't call back. By noon, a fresh start showed up in the form of a large white envelope slid under my door. The return address was from a downtown law office. I opened it and read the first page. Notice of intent to dispute transfer of property. Ashley had convinced Mom to hire a lawyer. They were going after the condo I had put solely in my name last week. I almost respected the boldness. Almost. At 2:17 p.m., my phone showed a name I hadn't seen in years: Grandma Evelyn. "Mark, honey, I just had a very enlightening conversation with your mother," she said. "She told me you've been unreasonable and vindictive." She paused, then let out a chuckle with more steel than warmth. Funny thing, the moment she started talking, I knew she was lying. So I made a few calls. "Did you know she's been using the family trust to pay for her trips?" I stayed quiet. "Well," Grandma went on, "I've decided I'm making some changes. And before you ask, no, she doesn't know yet." The next morning, Mom found out. Grandma had driven 2 hours into the city, gone straight to her attorney's office, and rewritten her will. She didn't just rewrite it, she completely changed it. Mom's inheritance was reduced to a single symbolic dollar. The bulk of the estate was assigned to me. By 9 a.m., my phone was full of messages. "What did you say to her?" "Ashley, This is disgusting. You're turning her against us. MOM. Fix this before Cabo, or don't bother calling yourself my son. I didn't reply. Instead, I called Grandma. She picked up after 2 rings. Sweetheart, she said, I've been thinking. You shouldn't spend Thanksgiving alone this year. Why don't you come here? I'll make your favorite, the pecan pie with the crust you like. That night, I packed a small bag and drove to her place. We sat at her kitchen table for hours, drinking coffee while she told me things I didn't know about the cabin, about the trust, and about how long she'd been quietly watching Mom take whatever she could get her hands on. By midnight, we had a plan. Not for revenge, not for getting even, for insulation. The kind of airtight financial protection that no joint account, no sudden vacation, and no accidental soda incident could ever get through again. When I left the next morning, the air was cold and sharp, the kind that wakes you up even before coffee. 2 hours later, I got a call from an unknown number. A woman's voice, clipped and professional, said, "This is a courtesy notice from Horizon Realty. Your sister's application for emergency mortgage relief has been denied. Would you like to be removed as her emergency contact?" Yes, I said immediately. The rest of the day unfolded slowly, like dominoes falling one by one. First, Mom's Cabo flight was grounded due to the coastal storms I'd heard about on the radio. Then came calls from her travel insurance company. Apparently, her non-refundable resort booking had in fact been refundable the whole time. The catch? Refunds could only be sent to the original payment account, which I had already closed. The resort had been refundable the whole time. The catch was that refunds could only go to the original payment account, and I had already closed it. By evening, I was sitting in my living room when my phone buzzed with a video from an unknown number. It was Ashley, standing outside an airport terminal in the rain. She was talking into the camera, visibly upset, saying that none of this would have happened if I hadn't overreacted. I didn't watch the rest. I muted the chat, locked my phone, and set it face down. Outside, the wind picked up. Inside, the quiet felt heavy, wrapping around me. That's when I realized they could yell, threaten, or hire lawyers all they wanted. The real change had already happened. Not in the condo deed. Not in the bank accounts. In me. They no longer had a key to my front door or to my head. The next morning, I dropped off a sealed envelope at my bank. Inside was a letter to my account manager making my grandmother the only co-signer on a new account. The trust money she'd reassigned to me was already being transferred. When I stepped back outside into the sunlight, I didn't check my phone. I didn't need to. Somewhere, they were trying to regain control of a game they no longer ran. And somewhere, Grandma Evelyn was likely sitting at her kitchen table, drinking coffee, smiling that sharp, confident smile of hers, knowing we had already won. Quietly, completely, without raising our voices. The knock at my workshop door came just after sunset. When I opened it, my father was there. Same old leather jacket, hands in his pockets, looking like he'd been rehearsing a speech for days but didn't know how to start. "I was in the neighborhood," he said. We both knew that wasn't true. Our family didn't do casual visits. He stepped inside, looking around, the tools lined up, the half-finished job on the lift, the new, now hiring, apprentices welcome sign on the wall. He didn't comment, but I saw the mix of pride and regret in his eyes. "Your sister," he began, then stopped. "She's not doing great." I leaned against the workbench, letting the silence work for me. He shifted, uneasy. "She wants to make things right," he said. "We're having a barbecue next weekend. Family's coming. Thought you should be there." I pictured it. The long table, the forced smiles, the whispered comments. The same people who said nothing when Ashley poured soda into my gas tank and called it a mistake. "Dad," I said, "you ever try to rebuild something when the foundation is still cracked?" He looked at me for a moment, then at the old fishing rod in the corner, the one he'd given me years ago. "Boat's still in the shed," he said. "We could take her out Sunday. Just you and me. Like we used to." For the first time in months, my chest felt lighter. That Sunday, while the rest of the family lit the grill, I was out on the water. The lake was calm, the autumn air crisp. We barely spoke, just cast our lines and watched the ripples. Halfway through, he broke the silence. "Son, maybe one day you'll find a way back to them. Or maybe you won't. But make sure you don't close the door on yourself." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. By sunset, we headed back. At the dock, he put a hand on my shoulder. "Whatever happens, I'm proud of you." That night, Alone in my workshop, I thought about his words. And I'll ask you the same. If blood calls you back, but history warns you away, which do you listen to?